I'm recording this video with permission from Scholastic. Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to be starting with chapter 49 of The Tale of Despereaux. I'm going to try to read as quickly as I can because we're so close to ending this book, and I want to make sure that all of the videos get posted for you guys the last week of school so that any of you guys who want to follow along can follow along. So this chapter is called What Do You Want, Megari-sao? Again, reader, we must go backward before we can go forward. We must consider for a moment what had occurred with the rat and the serving girl and the princess down in the dungeon before Despereaux made his way to them. What happened was this. Roscoe led the P and Meg deep into the dungeon to a hidden chamber, and there he directed Meg to put the princess in chains. "Course," said Meg, "she's going to have a hard time learning her lessons if she's all chained up like." "Do as I say," said Roscoe. "Maybe," said Meg, "before I lock her up, her and me could switch outfits, so we could start in already with her being me and me being a princess." "Oh yes," said Roscoe, "certainly. A wonderful idea. Miss Megari, princess, take off your crown and give it to the serving girl." The P sighed and took off her crown and handed it to Meg, and Meg put it on, and it slid immediately right down her small head and came to a rest, quite painfully, on her poor abused ears. "It's a biggish thing," she said, "and painful like." "Well, well," said Roscoe. "How do I look?" Meg asked, smiling at him. "Ridiculous," he said. "Laughable." Meg stood, blinking back tears. "You mean I don't look like a princess?" she said to the rat. "I mean," said Roscoe, "you will never look like a princess, no matter how big a crown you put on your tiny head. You look exactly like the fool you are and always will be. Now make yourself useful and chain the princess up. Dress-up time is over." Meg sniffed and wiped her eyes, and then bent to look at the pile of chains and locks on the floor. "And now, princess," he said, "I'm afraid that the time for your truth has arrived. I will now tell you what your future holds. As you consign me to the darkness, now I consign you too to a life spent in this dungeon." Meg looked up. "Ain't she going upstairs to be a serving maid?" "No," said Roscoe. "Ain't I going up to be a princess then?" "No," said Roscoe. "But I want to be a princess." "No one," said Roscoe, "cares what you want." As you know, reader, Megari-sao had heard this sentiment expressed many times in her short life, but now, in the dungeon, it hit her full force. The rat was right. No one cared what she wanted. No one had ever cared, and perhaps, worst of all, no one ever would care. "I want!" cried Meg. "Shh!" said the princess. "Shut up!" said the rat. "I want!" sobbed Meg. "I want! I want!" "What do you want, Meg?" the princess said softly. Shouted Meg. "What do you want, Megari-sao?" the princess shouted. "Don't ask her that," said Roscoe. "Shut up, shut up." But it was too late. The words had been said, and the question at last had been asked. The world stopped spinning, and all creation held its breath, waiting to hear what it was that Megari-sao wanted. "I want," said Meg. "Yes," shouted the P. "I want my ma," cried Meg into the silent, waiting world. "I want my ma." "Oh," said the princess. She held out her hand to Meg. Meg took hold of it. "I want my mother too," said the princess softly, and she squeezed the top of Meg's hand. "Stop it," shouted Roscoe. "Chain her up, chain her up." "Gore," said Meg, "I ain't going to do it." "You can't make me do it. I got the knife, don't I?" She took the knife and held it up. So here's the conversation between Megari and the Princess P. "If you have any sense at all," said Roscoe, "and I heartily doubt that you do, you will not use that instrument on me. Without me, you will never find your way out of the dungeon, and you will starve to death here, or worse." "Course," said Meg, "then lead us out now, or I will chop you up into little rat bits." "No," said Roscoe, "the princess shall stay here in the darkness, and you, Meg, will stay with her." "But I want to go upstairs," said Meg. "I'm afraid that you are stuck here, Meg," shouted the princess, "unless the rat has a change of heart and decides to lead us out." "There will be no changes of heart," said Roscoe. "None." "Gore," said Meg. She lowered the knife. And so the rat and the princess and the serving girl sat together in the dungeon as, outside the castle, the sun rose and moved through the sky and sank to the earth again, and night fell. They sat together until the candle had burned out and another one had been lit. They sat together in the dungeon. They sat and sat. And reader, truthfully, they might be sitting there still if a mouse had not arrived. So I think by that little statement we can see that Despereaux is coming to the rescue. So this next chapter, chapter 50, is called "In Which the Princess Says His Name." "Princess," Despereaux shouted. "Princess, I have come to save you." The Princess Pea heard her name. She looked up. "Despereaux," she whispered. And then she shouted it, "Despereaux!" Reader, nothing is sweeter in this sad world than the sound of someone you love calling your name. Nothing. For Despereaux, the sound was worth everything. His lost tail, his trip to the dungeon, and back out of it and back into it again. He ran towards the princess, but Roscuro, baring his teeth, blocked the mouse's way. The princess cried, "Oh, no, Rat, please, don't hurt him. He is my friend." Meg said, "Don't worry, princess. I will save the Missy." She took the kitchen knife. She aimed to cut off the rat's head, but she missed the mark. "Whoopsie," said Meg Sow. So that was a really short chapter, so we're going to keep reading. But we learned that Despereaux is coming, and Meg has kind of become the Princess Pea's friend again. She was tricked by the rat, but now she's kind of realizing that she was being deceived as well. So chapter 51 is called, "What is that smell?" "Ow!" screamed Roscuro. He turned to look at where his tail had been, and as he did, Despereaux drew his needle and placed the sharp tip of it right where the rat's heart should be. "Don't move," said Despereaux. "I will kill you." "Ha ha ha," Botticelli laughed from the sidelines. "Exactly." He slapped his tail on the floor in approval. "Absolutely delightful. A mouse is going to kill a rat. Oh, all of this is much better than I anticipated. I love it when mice come to the dungeon." So here's Despereaux standing up to the rat. "Let me see," said the other rats, pushing and shoving. "Stand back," Botticelli told him, still laughing. "Let the mouse do his work." Despereaux held the trembling needle against Roscuro's heart. The mouse knew that, as a knight, it was his duty to protect the princess. But would killing the rat really make the darkness go away? Despereaux bowed his head ever so slightly, and as he did so, his whiskers brushed against the rat's nose. Roscuro sniffed. "What is that smell?" he asked. "Mousy blood," shouted one rat. "Blood and bone," shouted another. "You're smelling tears," said Botticelli. "Tears and thwarted love." "Exactly," said Roscuro, "and yet there's something else." He sniffed again. And the smell of soup crashed through his soul like a great wave, bringing with it a memory of light, the chandelier, the music, the laughter, everything, all things that were not, could never be available to him as a rat. "Soup," moaned Roscuro, and he began to cry. "Boo!" shouted Botticelli. "Sss!" hissed the other rats. "Kill me," said Roscuro. He fell down before Despereaux. "It will never work. All I wanted was some light. That is why I brought the princess here, really, just for some beauty, some light of my own." "Please," shouted Botticelli, "do kill him. He is a miserable excuse for a rat." "No, Despereaux," said the princess, "don't kill him." Despereaux lowered his needle. He turned and looked at the pea. "Boo!" shouted Botticelli again. "Kill him! Kill him! All this goodness is making me sick. I've lost my appetite." "No, wait," said the princess. "Roscuro," she said to the rat. "What?" he said. Tears were falling out of his eyes and creeping down his whiskers and dripping onto the dungeon floor. And then the princess took a deep breath and put her hand on her heart. I think, reader, she was feeling the same thing that Despereaux had felt when he was faced with his father begging him for forgiveness. That is, P was aware suddenly of how fragile her heart was, how much darkness was inside it, fighting always with the light. She did not like the rat. She would never like the rat, but she knew what she must do to save her own heart. And so here are the words that the princess spoke to her enemy. She said, "Roscuro, would you like some soup?" The rat sniffed. "Don't torment me," he said. "I promise you," said the princess, "that if you lead us out of here, I will get cook to make you some soup, and you can eat it in the banquet hall." "Speaking of eating," shouted one of the rats, "give us the mousey." "Yeah," shouted another, "hand over the mouse." "Who would want him now?" said Botticelli. "The flavor of him will be ruined. All that forgiveness and goodness, blah. I, for one, am leaving." "Soup in the banquet hall?" Roscuro asked the princess. "Yes," said the pea. "Really?" "Truly, I promise." "Gore," shouted Meg, "soup is illegal." "But soup is good," said Despereaux. "Yes," said the pea, "isn't it?" The princess bent down before the mouse. "You are my knight," she said to him, "with the shining needle, and I am so glad that you found me. Let's go upstairs and let's eat some soup." And reader, they did. So we just have one more chapter left. It looks like Roscoe the rat had kind of a change of heart. Botticelli is still kind of an evil rat sticking to the evil rat ways in the dungeon, but Roscoe realized that light is way better than darkness, and he's kind of siding with Despereaux and the Princess P at the end. So our very last chapter is called Happily Ever After. But the question you want answered, I know, is did they live happily ever after? Yes and no. What of Roscoe? Did he live happily ever after? Well, the Princess P gave him free access to the upstairs of the castle, and he was allowed to go back and forth from the darkness of the dungeon to the light of the upstairs. But alas, he never really belonged in either place. The sad fate, I am afraid, of those whose hearts break and then mend in crooked ways. But the rat, in seeking forgiveness, did manage to shed some small light, some happiness, into another life. How? Roscoe, reader, told the princess about the prisoner who had once owned a red tablecloth, and the princess saw to it that the prisoner was released, and Roscoe led the man up out of the dungeon and to his daughter, Meg Sal. Meg, as you might have guessed, did not get to be a princess, but her father, to atone for what he had done, treated her like one for the rest of his days. And what of Despereaux? Did he live happily ever after? Well, he did not marry the princess, if that is what you mean by happily ever after. Even in a world as strange as this one, a mouse and a princess cannot marry. But reader, they can be friends, and they were. Together they had many adventures. Those adventures, however, are another story, and in this story, I'm afraid, must now draw to a close. But before you leave, reader, imagine this. Imagine an adoring king and a glowing princess, a serving girl with a crown on her head, and a rat with a spoon on his, all gathered around the table in the banquet hall. In the middle of the table, there is a great kettle of soup. Sitting in the place of honor, right next to the princess, is a very small mouse with big ears. And peeking out from behind a dusty velvet curtain, looking in amazement at the scene before them, are 4 other mice. "Mon Dieu, look, look!" said Antoinette. He lives, and he seems such the happy mouse." "Forgiven," whispered Lester. "Cripe," said Furlough, "unbelievable." "Just so," said the threadmaster, Hovis, smiling. "Just so." And reader, it is just so, isn't it? And this is the end. This is the picture that we leave off with. We see the Princess P and Despereaux sitting at the table, and it looks like even Despereaux's family kind of realized that Despereaux was right all along, and he kind of had this different quality about himself. So there's this little ending piece here. It says coda. So I'm just going to read this very, very brief. It's like 1 paragraph. Little ending to the story. Do you remember when Despereaux was in the dungeon, cupped in Gregory the jailer's hand, whispering a story in the old man's ear? I would like it very much if you thought of me as a mouse telling you a story. This story, with the whole of my heart, whispering it right into your ear, in order to save myself from the darkness, and to save you from darkness too. Stories are light, Gregory the jailer told Despereaux. Reader, I hope you have found some light here. So I think that's an awesome way to end. This author is a very good author. Kate DiCamillo is an awesome author. I definitely recommend reading her other books. But she kind of realized that stories are light. I think that you guys have probably experienced this so far in your own lives, about how that you've appreciated how, like, even when times are dark and things are hard, picking up a good story can really bring a lot of light into your life. And I've been reading a lot of times during this quarantine time when we're all at home. Stories have been bringing me a lot of light as well. So I recommend we finish this book together. Keep reading throughout the summer. I've had so much fun with you guys reading this the whole time. Thank you to those of you guys who are sticking with me the entire time. And I'm going to miss you guys so much. So thanks so much for hanging out with me. And I hope you guys have a wonderful summer. Bye, guys.